mean, authenticity is about not being afraid to own your strengths, whether you're a quiet person and more introverted, or more of a loud person, more just bold and confident.
Now, can you give me a couple examples or anything in your line of work or people that you've come across, or clients, I guess, for you?
A lot of what I teach is people are often so much in their head, so consumed by intrusive thoughts, that it becomes very hard to communicate what you want, and sometimes it will come out wrong or passive aggressive or whatever it is because of the noise going on in your head.
Powered by WinLads.
Hey guys, welcome to Under the Coconut Tree. It's Tanila here. Now, have you ever been lost in your life, not sure what you want to do? Circling the drain maybe? Not sure where your career's going? Or maybe even your personal life? Well, don't I have the guest for you today? We have a well-being coach / career coach / coach of everything / I don't know what he actually coaches. Heshan, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. It was a bit of an interesting introduction, but I feel like you have a lot to share. So I know I gave you a bit of everything, but in a nutshell, man, what do you do as a wellness coach?
Yeah, so career performance and well-being, those are kind of the two things that I tackle. And basically, I work with leadership and helping what I call heart-led leaders to discover their voice, step into their authentic selves in leadership, and be celebrated for being themselves in their organizations.
Okay, you said authentic selves. I want to kind of pull on that thread a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
What, I guess, separates someone that's authentic and then someone that's a little bit fake, to be blunt? Yeah.
To put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, authenticity is about not being afraid to own your strengths, whether you're a quiet person and more introverted, or more of a loud person, more just bold and confident.
Yep.
It's just about making sure that you're being who you are and not trying to put on kind of a mask and be what everyone else thinks you should be.
Right. But don't the Japanese say that every person has 13 different masks? So depending on the situation, the demographic, or even the geographical location, people might be different versions. Am I contradicting you here, or am I wrong completely? Tell me more about that.
That's a good one. Actually, it's 3 masks, right? I've
Sorry,
heard that
okay,
saying, yeah. As in, it's the mask that you show the world. And a big part of the work that I do is helping people remove the mask that is inauthentic, or the mask that they're using to seek approval from other people, in order to just be themselves and be approved for that. So it's kind of helping them shed those layers that, just make them not them, so they can be more of themselves.
Do you feel like people tend to seek approval more often than not? And a second follow-up question to that is, why do people do that? Or what have you come across in your journey so far?
Yeah, I think majority of the world, and I think society at large, looks to seek approval. I think we live in what I call the attention economy. So with social media and everything like that, all of us are vying for attention, approval in all sorts of ways. Social media grades us on the likes that we get on our pictures, So
But the more likes you have, the better of a human you are, I thought. Is that not what it is?
You could put it that way. So that's not my philosophy. Maybe yours.
What's your philosophy?
Yeah, so my philosophy is we shouldn't be doing things to be liked, but to be respected long term. So a lot of people are doing things to be liked in the short term, and that could be it's basically called people pleasing. Is the way I would put it. So people pleasing is essentially trying to do all the things that will get other people to like you, thinking that will get you the respect. And I think there's a difference between the two.
Okay. You touched on some really good topics there, and I don't even know where to begin, but I feel like people tend to, more often than not, go for short-term satisfaction rather than long-term result. Now, that's kind of in line with what you're saying.
Completely, yeah.
Now, can you give me a couple examples or anything in your line of work, or people that you've come across, or clients, I guess, for you, that have had that situation where they're doing these things that are short-term, and it's just almost like you said, the social media, which is showing your highlights reel of life, when really it's a bit of a facade, and 95% of the life is nothing like what they show to the world.
Yeah. So an example, I mean, pretty much every single one of my clients I've ever worked with, in some way, shape, or form, is not being their true selves, right? And putting on that mask. One in particular that I have recently, pretty senior client. He works in America in the finance sector, and he's pretty senior in his position, so he has a lot of authority and a lot of say.
Like an executive level kind of thing? Yep, gotcha.
I think, executive or potentially C-suite, I can't remember which one. But
right, gotcha.
So he basically has a lot of say, but he found himself always sacrificing what was important to him, his needs, to meet everyone else's.
At work.
Yeah. It actually sipped into his personal life as well, with family and friends and things like that. But that context that we spoke about was work-related. and how he, even as a leader, he always seemed to be the one that was the shortest on time, the shortest on energy, simply because he was always doing everything else everyone else wanted of him, even the people that worked for him.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not incapable. He's obviously very successful in his career
Yeah.
to hit that C-suite or that executive level. But he's struggling with time management, or he's just, things got above him and he's kind of gasping for breath, or like what did you kind of give him or provide him with the solution of?
Yeah, so I mean, he did come to me for time management help,
Right.
and what I actually told him, it's not about creating more time, it's about creating more space emotionally and more space mentally inside of yourself, to be able to better serve the people around you, and also just find more freedom inside of yourself as well to get your work done.
Yeah.
A lot of people think they don't have time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? But yet there's people out there doing seemingly so much to some of us, where we're like, how is it possible that they're doing all that? One way is obviously to delegate and manage your tasks better and to optimize. The other way is to optimize your brain and your emotions so that you actually have more capacity for life. And that's kind of the approach I take with helping people like that client.
Yeah, and the results, you can see them already, or they're still in process?
Yeah, so this is transformation work,
Yeah.
right? Transformation takes time, and it's not about just short-term gain and feeling like you get an instant result. But what happens is shortly over time, as you keep going through coaching sessions of this nature, you start to transform on an identity level, not just a results-based level.
Okay, cool.
And that's far more long-term.
Yeah, now going back a little bit, I know you set up your own business and doing what you do, and you seem to be so passionate from the chat we had prior jumping on the podcast as well,
Yeah.
which I love, and that's why I wanted you on my podcast. 4 years, I think you said you've been doing it now.
Yeah.
Very different, because it's kind of a hard sell. If I think about it just from a bird's eye point of view, to especially in, I guess, the cultural background that you have, to be able to sell, hey, I'm Tati, you know what I want to do? I want to go tell people how to live their life. Like, I mean, how do you sell that, man? Like, sell it to me. Like, I feel like I'm in finance and I'm a little bit cheap, so I guess to pay for that will be a hard sell. I'm not, degrading any of the work you do, but how did you, A, convince your very brown parents to be like, you know what, stuff my degree and my master's and all that, I'm going to go teach people how to live life or be better at their work, and then C, how do you convince people itself to take on your services when most people are, A, not willing to spend, and B, it's kind of like hard to believe in someone else telling them how to better live their life?
Yeah, well, I think you're making a point there around convincing and telling people how to live their lives. I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
So I actually take a different approach. So people have challenges. We all have challenges, right? Work-life balance, time poorness. We're stressed out at work. These are real challenges that people in corporate world and all working sectors actually face every single
Even
day.
a stay-at-home mum has that problem, I guess.
Yeah,
to be completely
exactly.
honest,
And that's a good point too, that a lot of what happens in the four walls of your office seeps into your personal life and actually impacts that area as well. And families suffer for it. Your health suffers for it on a personal context, and ultimately your happiness suffers for it as well. So I feel like there's a massive gap right now where people are struggling to strike that work-life balance in a way where companies are demanding more and more and more from people these days. There's more the expectations are higher, the demands are greater, the workloads are heavier.
Yep.
And that's forever increasing according to the data. And
your KPIs never go down. KPIs only go up, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so what's happening to the point of time is we only have 24 hours in a day. We either wake up earlier to try and make up for all those demands and expectations, or we try to optimize our time to do better with every minute that we have to get all the work done.
More efficient, I guess.
But there's a glass ceiling there,
Right.
which is what I was saying before. Eventually, the ceiling is going to break, where time to get things done is going down, demands and expectations are going up, and basically that leaves people at a crossroads. What do I do? That crossroads is where people come to me.
Yeah, okay,
Because
cool.
it's like I'm being pulled every single which direction with my personal life. I've got responsibilities with my family, and I've got things to do in the weekend that's taking all my energy, my space, and my time. And at work, I'm getting slammed. Something's got to give. I've got to change the way that I'm doing things somehow to make a better quality of life for me, so that I don't burn out or worse.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where people start talking to me.
Yeah, because I've seen your post for a while now, for a few years, and it's definitely catches my eye.
Yeah.
How did you, to go back to the initial point, who were your first clients, and how did you convince leaving you? Because you had a corporate job beforehand, am I correct?
A lot of different jobs and businesses.
Yeah, okay. So tell me a little bit about that transition where you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this 9 to 5 anymore. I want to go teach people how to better live a more comfortable, more efficient life, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, how did that go? And I really want to hear more about how did you break this to your parents and what did they say?
Yeah, I'll tell that story. So I think there's a big gap between me doing what I'm doing now and when I left corporate.
Okay.
But from that first jump of corporate world where I was working in the banking sector, I was in there because that was the thing to do out of uni. I got the opportunity.
Yeah.
I did an internship and then that turned into a job. And basically, while I was in there, all I saw or couldn't unsee was all the issues that were happening in the culture of that company.
Right, okay.
And the impact that was having on the people in there.
It was a big company, was it?
Yeah, big company. Not to name names.
No, we won't.
Yeah, but,
we're on podcasts.
Yeah.
The internet is forever, my friend. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, that was where my attention was spent. It was every day I was looking at like people being unhappy or like office politics or people, just not being enthusiastic or motivated by the work that they were doing. It almost felt like in that, I'm talking about this particular culture, people were unhappy, but they were still doing this thing and spending most of their time in this place every single day.
Even though they didn't feel like they really wanted to be there? Is that kind of like...
And whether they were conscious of that or not, that was what I was experiencing from just what felt like a lot of lack of motivation from the employees. And so I used to sit in meetings, and I hope these people don't see this, but while people were talking, I was taking notes of like behavioral stuff. I was like, oh, that person like is doing this and this, and like these people aren't like communicating in a way that's actually effective, or this meeting's being a waste of time for X, Y, and Z reasons. And so I was starting to pick apart the problems that actually show up in corporates at that time. Yeah. Eventually, just this something in me, there was like a voice that was just saying, you got to leave, you got to leave, you got to leave. And it got louder and louder and louder. Yeah. And I couldn't ignore it. So I was like, I got to leave and I've got to follow my heart and see what's next. I didn't have a plan.
Yep. Okay. That's pretty ballsy, man. Like,
yeah.
To be like, I don't have a plan, but I want to leave my cushy 9 to 5 finance job.
Yeah. And this,
kudos, though.
Yeah, thank you. And this is where like the side of purpose came in. I felt like I was being called to like some sort of purpose in my life that was outside of the corporate world. Which is, funnily enough, now dragged me right back in there. But
but to help them.
Yeah, to help them, of course. And my dad at the time was actually supportive of it, me leaving. Though he did question, he's like, are you sure you want to leave, like, big contract and you got money on the table,
you're
and
telling
security?
You're telling me your Sri Lankan-born dad...
I know, right? It's crazy.
Was questioning you leaving a 9 to 5 cruisy, high-paying job at a bank? Well, who would have bloody thought that?
No, I don't know. But as in, to be fair to my dad, he doesn't go to some of the extremes I've seen other Sri Lankans go.
So it's a little bit easier on you. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. A little bit easier. And I mean, I guess like all of this was born inside of the story of me and my dad and my family as well. Like my dad is in the corporate world still. He has been a corporate man his whole life, 40 years. Working in consulting in all sorts of different sectors and holding various leadership positions as well inside of companies.
So you probably understood some of that, the challenges that you were seeing and the behavioural issues that employees were facing. You probably saw that or witnessed it, whether consciously or subconsciously. Yeah,
I actually hadn't spoken to him about that at the time, but I know he did deal with a lot of behavioural challenges that show up in organisations. And as leaders, that often does happen and people don't necessarily know how to effectively deal with them. But people problems are probably the biggest problems that show up at their core inside of these organizations. So I think having a father who came from the world of security and job and all of that, I think he did a pretty decent job of letting me kind of fly away and seek after something else when there was no real plan, which is very probably opposing to the way that he approached job security.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. And then I remember you mentioning he was kind of your first clients as well.
Yeah, so I mean,
that's kind of interesting. How did you? Yeah. Because I feel like because he's a person that you looked up to as a hero most of your life, right? And then for those tables to switch, and then for you to tell him, hey, dad or tati or whatever you call your dad, maybe you should try approach this. And then how did that go? And did he even believe you and try it and give you a shot? I'm sure he gave you a shot, but that's a harder sell than. I mean, if you sell it to your dad on life coaching or well-being coaching, I feel like you've done it. So how did that go?
Again, I didn't try to sell it to him, but I think through my example and through the iterative process of growing this business, my family as a whole have started to see the benefits of this work. He was actually the first person I coached on this, and I did that intentionally at the time to build out the program I built called Success Without Sacrifice. So it's teaching people how to succeed in their career without sacrificing all the things that matter to them, including themselves.
Okay, cool.
Right? And I felt like my father was pretty much the perfect person to talk to about this, and also to build the program through. So I coached him. He agreed to do it. I don't think he necessarily understood what it was at the time, but he was willing to support me and to also get breakthrough. And by the end of it, I actually coached him on a lot of stuff around, say, boundary setting in leadership. And
Did you teach him that in Sri Lankan households as well? Because I feel like boundary setting is an important one. We
we'll
won't touch that. I go, yeah. That's on next week's episode. Yeah.
No, but as in, you're pointing to something, I will go there actually. I think in Sri Lankan culture, like boundaries, especially in the previous generation, almost wasn't a topic, at least in our family. And yeah,
we're the same.
There you go. Yeah. And I think the discussion around getting people who've never had their boundaries respected or even considered what their boundaries were to suddenly consider them. To his credit, he took it on, and he has ever since been setting a lot more boundaries in his job and things like that, because I know what he does. And continued to hold them. But it took a lot of breaking through mental barriers around the idea of boundaries and basically self-prioritization and respect, which is what he had to uncondition.
And that's a hard one because he's been doing it for like decades, right?
Yeah.
I do want to pull on one thread, which is slightly segueing off topic, but first of all, I really appreciate what you said and that it's not a sell. I think that's important because in my mind, I keep thinking it's a sell, and that's probably a wrong way to look at it. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I think it's a good way to look at things. So perspective is key. But you touched on boundaries in, I guess not just Sri Lankans, but like Asian culture.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, some of the stuff that I faced is, for example, the funniest thing that I could face is the other day, like last week, my dad comes to me and he goes, "Can you send this email for me?" I was like, "Yeah, no worries," because the expectation's there. And I try to help my dad out because, tech isn't, his strongest suite. I'm like, "Yeah, is it in your inbox?" He's like, No, I'll forward you the email and then you forward it to the other person. Right? And I'm like, so why don't you just forward it to him yourself?
Yeah, logic.
And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I could do that." And I was like, and then it was like a beautiful moment where he was just so accustomed to not, or having me just do it for him, that he didn't think twice that it's actually a lot faster, a lot easier for everyone, and even himself, with the same amount of work, to do what he wanted to do. So I guess the boundaries and the understanding is something that I'm trying to kind of navigate in my relationship with my dad, and I love it. I'll do anything for him. And what would your advice be to kind of set that boundary from a personal, I guess, relationship rather than a professional one with said parents or said loved one?
I mean, setting boundaries with parents, and I'm saying particularly in Asian cultures, is not easy when they had no context of it, which is what I was saying earlier, right? So I think it is discussion, like actually sharing like why it's important for you. Because I think if there's one thing that Sri Lankan parents care about is like what's important to their children, right? They'll sacrifice themselves. I'm not saying all parents, but especially mine, would sacrifice themselves and give up anything to make sure that we're happy.
Absolutely.
So if we explain what's actually important to us and why it's important, I think that goes a long way to helping them start to understand why this behavior might be necessary and why setting boundaries might be important to you, and they would more than often not decline it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a decline that I've faced personally, but I feel like it's just sometimes they forget, and it's something that's ingrained, like you're saying, over decades of being burned into their skull that this is just how it is, and for them to try something new is completely different. It'll be like teaching an 80-year-old how to jump on the internet or whatever it is, for the first time. And another example that I just remembered while I was talking to you is literally a couple of weeks ago. Again, my dad comes to me and he's like, "Hey, what's my password for my email?" How am I meant to know your password for your email? And it's just those little things where they have these expectations. And part of me is just like, I often joke with, I guess a lot of my friends as well. I guess Asians have kids with the expectation of serving them. I say it in a kind of a funny way because it's kind of, hilarious. But I guess there is some truth to it that does need to have its the perspective change in the parents' mind. And is that something that you faced with your clients before? Specific to work, even if it's not just work, but even the personal lives as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're talking about is like a self-sacrificial mindset here, right? Like where sacrifice is like ingrained into the culture and into especially that generation. So you're talking about how do we get people who've sacrificed themselves in their entire lives and that's all they've known to suddenly be like, hey, I'm actually willing to prioritize myself and therefore respect the priorities of others. Because I think that what I teach is less about leadership externally and more about the art of self-leadership. If you want something out of somebody else, how do you do that within yourself or within your life first to set the example? So if you're saying, Dad, I want you to respect my boundaries in X, Y, and Z ways, I would also look at where in my life could I start setting those boundaries where maybe I'm breaking them and not even realizing. Or just looking at like, maybe the boundaries I have within myself that I have just totally disregarded sometimes. Like maybe I say that I'm going to do something at X time and then I don't do it. That's like breaking your own boundaries, breaking your own integrity. Right. I believe personally, and my philosophy is anything that we do in our own life starts to mirror out there, right? So if we're breaking our boundaries in our own life, chances are somewhere in some shape or some form, somebody will start to mirror that behavior to us to teach us the lesson. And I know that could be considered spiritual, but I actually believe that's a mindset thing as well.
I don't think it's spiritual at all. I actually agree. I think it's more from a manifestation point of view. It's kind of similar, I guess, mirroring the energies of what you're putting it out there. I mean, it's kind of like the red car theory, which I don't know if you've heard of, but and if anyone listening at home, I guess it's you buy a car, red car or whatever, even the brand of car, and all of a sudden everyone's got that bloody car. You just see it everywhere on the road. So that's part of manifestation. I think it's true, and I see it all the time in my life, and it's fantastic. So mirroring, I guess, is kind of similar to that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, to further on your point, the reticular activating system in the brain, that's what's happening when you see the red car, right? So if what we focus on, the reticular activating system focuses on that even more. It's literally in the brain. So,
so it's the science behind it. It's not just me imagining it.
That's the science behind it. And the theory is what you focus on grows, right? And that's my philosophy as well. So if we're focusing on the negative and all these things that are going wrong, and our brain is giving more attention to those details than the things that are going right in our life, then we're going to start to lose perspective a little bit, right? Not to say that we should completely disregard what's going wrong and only focus on what's right. I think there's a balance.
Okay, cool. And when you're saying just focusing on what you want more of, not like $1 million, right? I mean,
there's so much to that. I mean,
look, it was a bit of tongue in cheek by me, to be honest, but I'm just curious.
As in, because that's also like, what do people value, and are we talking about external validation here when it comes to like status or money or job titles, or are we talking about being internally validated within ourselves? That's the journey I really help people go on.
Okay, just a slight segue now, and I don't know, I'm not sure if it's something you can help with, but in terms of relationships and taking it to that from that point of view of, I guess, manifestation and mirroring and soul searching internally, and then kind of attracting what you are or what you want, do you do coaching in that field as well? Like
in what field? Like
not platonic relationships, but romantic relationships. Is that something that you do any work in, or is that
the work that I do works for all relationships? And because I think whether we form them platonically or romantically, there's fundamental principles that we can apply to improve on relationships, right? Communication for one, being able to listen. Just hearing the perspective of other people. I think communication and is probably the biggest thing that is at the crux of whether a relationship works or not, whether it's platonic or romantic, and that's definitely something I coach people on.
Right. I guess if you could give advice to anyone from any relationship, platonic or otherwise, what would be a few points that you would give in terms of being able to improve the quality, not the number of, but the quality of relationships that you have, whether it's 1 or 10, for example?
Again, I think that's born inside, like the art of communication, right? And I think if we talk about how to effectively communicate with people, a lot of people would focus on maybe some external factors like how to enunciate or how to say the right words and like knowing what to focus on. I take more of an approach of, if you clear your mind of everything that's creating noise inside of there, that's making it hard to articulate what you want to articulate, if you actually pull out those weeds and clear them, you'll start to speak clearer to people. You'll start to speak more from your truth and start to speak more from your heart. A lot of what I teach is people are often so much in their head, so consumed by intrusive thoughts, that it becomes very hard to communicate what you want, and sometimes it will come out wrong or passive aggressive or whatever it is because of the noise going on in your head.
There's a lot of information, a lot of gems or nuggets that you've said here today, but I guess if you wanted to kind of impart 1 or 2 key things for the viewers that are listening and watching at home, about what you do and how they can improve from the get-go at the very end of listening to our chat here today, what would they be?
Yeah, so there's fundamentally two ways that people measure success, right? And I think all of what we're talking about here is creating a successful life. How do we succeed both professionally and personally? You're either measuring success by the results you produce or by the purpose you're connected to. And when we find purpose in our life and start to draw towards what purpose, why are we here, what are we doing this for, what's the intention behind what we're doing?
Like internally?
Yeah, internally. Yep. You start to build a life from that foundation of purpose and measure success by how purposefully you live each day. That's when you start to create that work-life balance that I was speaking about earlier, and everything else starts to work too. So it's steering away from results-based performance and more towards purpose-based performance is what I would think is the best thing to impart.
I agree. I read Ikigai, which pretty much talks exactly about your latter comment about purpose, which is find your purpose and everything kind of falls into place. But the challenge is finding your purpose. And it seems like you really found your purpose. And it's awesome to hear. So two takeaways: how to measure things to success, and then finding what your purpose is. And lastly, I guess, how does someone find their purpose? Because I think
big question.
It's a huge question, and I know I'm not asking for what's the meaning of life kind of answer,
but in a way it is, right? But I think to find purpose, you have to clear. I feel like you have to clear yourself internally. If you're peaceful inside of yourself, you're able to be still, regulate your emotions, clear your mindset, keep that calm. I think purpose starts to unravel itself or unveil itself for you. And that's why I think purpose is an inside game. So we need to get our insides right.
Yeah. All right, cool. Heshan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. There's so many good gems that I know the viewers at home are going to absolutely love. So all the best in everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
And for everyone at home, thank you so much for watching Under the Coconut Tree today. Heshan's been fantastic. Make sure you like and subscribe because there's going to be heaps of great episodes coming up. Thank you so much.
Powered by WinLads.